excited that you are here on True North 365, learning how to follow your inner compass. And the reason I invited you to be on the show is because you've been a big influencer in my life in the way that you've spoke life into me. You are a pastor and you are a mother to multiple children. You are a wife and you are a leader in your community. And you also have a ministry through Saturday Night Supper Club, which I am going to post the link to on here. However, people can start getting involved in Castle Rock, Colorado. Post your SoundCloud link on here so people can follow up with you on that and be able to learn more about Christianity and God and how to follow that. And when you and I spoke last week, we talked about doing women empowerment. So I want to jump into that, but I also want to ask a few questions so our audience can get to know who you are. So welcome.
Okay.
I'm really excited. Yes. So tell us about who you are. Like I just said who you are, but who are you? What do you do? Why do you do what you do?
Well, my name's Paula Waterman. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a Christ follower. I'm someone who's trying to add value to the world while I'm here. You know, I do have a small little church called Saturday Night Supper Club. It meets on Saturday nights. I also do real estate. And I try to just kind of be a role model for different women like yourself, who are strong, powerful women and wanting to know how to like make their way in this world. And it can be very difficult for a strong woman, you know? And so I do feel like I have a unique call, if you will, a responsibility to other strong women and help them to kind of forge their way and not be discouraged by, obstacles that might come to them.
Absolutely. And those obstacles, I think that those obstacles definitely will come, especially as a woman. We haven't had our rights for that long. If we really think about it, less than 50 years ago, women were still having problems, being in the workforce and having respect from their peers and their husbands and saying, hey, I can do what a man can do. And I think I might be able to do it better in certain aspects. And here we are today with a woman who ran for president last year. And I have no doubt that the next running, if there's a female president that runs, that she'll be able to do it. And then, the queen's running the world. So I think women have a lot to offer, So being a woman, how do you manage your worry, your doubt, and your fear? And what advice do you have for women who are struggling with those as well?
Well, before I'm a woman, I would say I'm a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. And so the way that I think handling worry, doubt, and fear works for men or women, and I really try to go to the Lord and say, God, is this fear legit for me? And usually fear is something that's debilitating in our life, and it's something that wants to stop us and not move us forward. I would say usually. And so I try to evaluate, is this fear a legitimate thing for me, or can I give it to God? Is it something I need to give to the Lord and let him handle it because I don't have the answer for it? I find that fear is a tool that the enemy of our souls uses to keep us underneath our calling, if you will, beneath our calling, trapped and in bondage and afraid to step out and afraid to take risks and afraid of what people think about us. And I think that the enemy uses fear all the time to prevent us from reaching our destiny. And so for me, whenever I feel fear, and I feel fear in a lot of different areas, like, am I going to make enough money this month? Is anyone going to show up to my Saturday Night Supper Club? Are my kids going to turn out okay? I have fear in every arena of my life, but I really try not to be ruled by fear and let fear make my decisions, because ultimately emotions inform us of things, but they can't rule us. And fear is an emotion. Fear is simply an emotion, and it can't rule us. We have to be smart, we have to be wise, but it can't rule us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And fear is something that, the enemy uses against us. And whenever I start coming up with obstacles and challenges, especially being, self-employed, it can creep in. And I remind myself that when I start having fear, when there's obstacles, that just means that there's something really great about to happen, that God's about to bless me in a way that I can't even imagine. And it shines true every single day that I push forward and face some fears that used to be fears, but aren't so much anymore, but I know will be again, because that's the way it works. I just keep going and God keeps showing up. And it's incredible what happens when you just remind yourself, oh, I'm faced with a challenge, or, oh, I'm scared of that. Oh, that must mean the enemy is really trying to stop me from achieving something that's going to bring glory to God. And it's just time and time again, you know, it just keeps going through. So absolutely. Now, when did you know that you were meant to be doing what you're doing now? When did that happen?
Yeah, I don't think I ever knew one time. I think for me, as I learned more and more about my personality, when I was a little girl, now remember, I was born in the 60s, and I don't even want to tell you my age, but I was born in the 60s. And that was still a time of great gender role division. Like men did one thing and women did another. You know, my dad would tell me all the time, men are doctors, women are nurses. And that was the paradigm that I grew up with, which was really unfortunate because it taught me untruth, right? It taught me things that were not really true, and that women were only suited for some roles and men were only suited for some roles. And I struggled with that for a long time, with my personality, which is a very strong personality, and I'm a leader, and I get things done. And it was hard for me to, what's the word? Accept that, I suppose, because it didn't ring true for my own personality. It didn't ring true for my own experience. And the sad thing is, I also grew up in a Christian culture that for a long time reinforced that whole idea that men could be pastors and women were the Sunday school teachers or whatever, you know, and that ultimate leadership in a church could never be from a woman, especially in the conservative kind of Christian culture that I was a part of. And so for a long time, I really, really struggled with that because, you know, I love the Lord and I want to honor him and be in right relationship, especially as he's created this world. But at the same time, none of that made sense to me. I mean, you talk about a woman president. We've had women world leaders long before Hillary ran for presidency. We had Margaret Thatcher. She was the prime minister of England, and she was called the Iron Maiden. You know, she was, I think the Iron Maiden, that's something else. But anyway, she was a hammer. I mean, she was a tough old bird. You know, she was a strong, strong leader for her country. And it was hard for me because I'm like, how can women be leaders in the government or in industry or business or whatever and not leaders in the church? And because to me, there's no separation between sacred and secular. Everything is sacred. God created everything sacred. There's no difference between church and the world in the sense of what God considers sacred, you know? And so I had to really learn a lot about my own personality. I did a bunch of personality tests, which I always talk to you about, Alex, you know, the DISC and Strengths Finder and Myers-Briggs, and kind of had to discover who I was as a person, who God had made me to be as a person. And then I had to decide, was I going to let other people speak my identity over me, or I was going to let God speak my identity over me? If he created me with certain strengths and gifts and a type of personality, then obviously if I'm high D on the DISC and I'm a high leader, I'm called to lead. So then I had to decide, what did I care about enough to lead, you know? And for one thing, we all know that it takes money to make the world go around and to do anything. And so I love doing real estate for two reasons. It's a really good monetary. You can make a lot of money doing real estate. It's profitable if you do it right. In Colorado's real estate, you know, is going crazy. The landscape's going crazy. The other thing about real estate that I like is I like helping people like you, Alex, or other people, first-time home buyers, getting into a home and walking them through all the paperwork and all the details because they're so scared, they're nervous, and it's their first home purchase, and you know they don't know what to do. And that's the part about real estate that I like, is helping people achieve their dream of home ownership, because especially in this world, home ownership is a really big milestone for people to say, man, I've made it, I'm moving ahead, it's a great investment. And I love helping people make great investments, not just in real estate, but I love doing stocks and stuff like that. But in terms of doing ministry, I went through a really bad heartache and heartbreak with my divorce. I was divorced like however many years ago I was. And it really opened up my eyes to how there's a lot of suffering in this world. A lot of stuff that happens to people that is unjust, they don't see coming, or they're just struggling with the everyday trials, and I'm like, you know what? I want to provide a place that allows people to just come in and be who they are. They don't have to have anything together. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care about anything like that. I just want to say to you, Jesus loves you and he has some answers for you. You know what I mean? And he'll minister to you right where you're at. You don't have to have your act together at all, and he wants to help you in your brokenheartedness. And that was my motivation for starting Saturday Night Supper Club. Was I just want to be a place where we can be a family together, we can do life together, and we can be Jesus to each other.
Yeah.
So that was my motivation for that.
That's great. And you're totally right about the first time home buyers. Like, it's exciting. I haven't done it quite yet, just because the Colorado market is so crazy. So we're waiting for that perfect time, for my kiddo and I, but I know that, you want it to, there's like certain aspects that you want out of that home, and, like, being able to have somebody help create that dream of buying your first home. I mean, it's the biggest investment you'll ever make. So it's important to have someone that's going to guide you through that. And I know that you have a heart to be able to do that. And you also have a heart to help other people who want to get involved in real estate and show them how to join your team and how to create their own success. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows what's in the future, right? Maybe I'll be a real estate broker on the side of my RBOM.
I want you to. I would love that so much.
Yes. And Jesus meeting you where you are, gosh, that's so true, because for a long time, people I've met and myself, we believe we need to be at a certain place or be doing a certain amount of good in the world, or, fix our sins and fix what we've done wrong before we can come to Jesus. And that's not who Jesus was. If he was here now, he'd be riding on the bus. He'd be in the welfare food bank areas. He would be downtown with the homeless. He would be in the places where people are, just so in despair, and he'd be in those homes where people are going through domestic violence, going through molestation, having thoughts of suicide. He would be there helping them. And that's who he was, at least my understanding is, and then who he will be when he comes back. And, just be aware that you don't have to go to church to communicate with God or with Jesus. He's here all the time with us if you believe it, and will help you through whatever you need. And it's amazing to hear you talk about that. So thanks for touching on that. And I'm glad he's brought you to where you are now, because now we've known each other for a long time. And Jesus was a big part of that. So let's see. So following, True North 365, the purpose is about following your compass and being able to internally recognize when you're going the right way, when you're going the wrong way. And you talked about, being who you are in God's eyes, not just in the opinions of others. So when you're making moves and when you're moving forward in your life, how do you decide the difference between intuition and then just having indigestion? Like what helps you decide which way to go there?
Yeah, intuition for me, this is going to be a bunch of just Christian answers because that's who I am, Alex. But, I'm trying to get to the place where I'm asking the Lord, hey, what do you want me to do? I didn't know if I should do real estate for a long time. And sometimes you have to, again, what are my motives? Am I doing this to please other people? Am I doing this because it's truly a desire of my heart? Am I doing this because it's a strength of mine? So many people, I feel like, try to please other people rather than who God's created them to be or what God's called them to be, because either they're afraid of people's judgment and criticism and all that kind of thing. It goes back to fear. If you're motivated by fear, I'm like, you need to check that, because fear is not a good motivator, a lot of times if I don't have peace about it, I'll know it's not for me. Like if I have something in my mind and or I think about something. And you know, I don't know about you, Alex, but I feel like I could do 100 things. Like I could go be a waitress and be happy. I could go do this or that and be happy. But just because things are good doesn't mean they're God. Or just because things are good don't mean that you're called to do it. We can't do everything in this world that we want to do. You know, you have to kind of decide what is your call in life. What's your mission? What's your destiny? What have you been called to? What do you have a passion for? What breaks your heart? You know, those are the things that I think that are guideposts to tell us what we're really meant to do and what we're called to do. I don't believe we're here on earth by mistake. I don't think this is a chance. I don't think we, you know, evolved from whatever stars or whatever. I think God has a purpose and a plan and destiny for every single one of us. And we have to decide if we're going to make a difference in this world and be led to do something and add value to people, or if we're just going to exist and get through. I don't want to exist and get through, you know? The other thing I think that helps me when I'm deciding what I'm called to do is it in the area of my strengths? Because I believe, I've told you this before, Alex, we got to lean into our strengths and let our weaknesses go. If you can, hire to your weaknesses, but don't do something that is in an area that you're weak in, that your personality is not tuned towards. Do something that you're absolutely strong in. You're going to have a lot of favor in that, and you're going to have a lot of it's going to energize you because you're going to see results because it comes naturally. But if we do things that don't come naturally to us because other people want us to, or for whatever reason, usually you're not fulfilled in that. Usually it's boring. Usually it's just something to make money. And listen, I like to make money as much as the next person, but I want to make money doing something I love. I want to have a job where I go to this job and say, wow, I can't believe I get paid to do that. I love it so much. I would do it if it was free, you know, that kind of thing. I don't want to do a job that I'm like, I'm just doing it to make money. There's got to be something that has my strengths involved with it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's there's a guy called Gary Vee, and he talks about how the person who follows their passion and makes less money will eventually surpass the guy who's following the money and not following his passion. And whether it's surpassing him financially or surpassing him in a quality of life, I think both are just as valuable to each other. I know I'm a lot happier working, 10 hours a day for myself than I was working 8 hours a day for somebody else. And I work 7 days a week, and I'm okay with that. Like, I love what I'm doing. And sure, my voice is going out because I am working so much, but I'm talking to people and sharing my heart with people and finding my tribe and building an amazing community and help lifting other people up. And it's interesting, Paula, because we're talking about encouragement, God, and really this conversation is focused around women. Men are great as well, and I think that they add a lot of value to the world, but I am finding, for me, communicating with women, like when I meet with women, the conversation's very different than when I meet with men. And most of the time when I meet with a man about Arbonne, he's mentioning his wife. Well, my wife and her friends would probably love to do a party or use the products or whatever. And it's just interesting in how they react to my mission to go to Uganda and to share, encouragement with the world through this YouTube channel. I'm finding there's different heartstrings for women than there are for men,
Yeah, for sure. I think the one thing I'd like to communicate about female empowerment is to lift up one person or one gender doesn't mean you have to diminish another. See, sometimes people think that, oh, in order for me to be special, I have to denigrate somebody else. And that is completely untrue. The reality is God created this world with a big, large table, and there's a lot of chairs at this table, and it involves men and women. And for a long time, women maybe have not had their place at the table for whatever reason. Maybe men have held them down, maybe the culture, maybe whatever. But now women need to come to the table and take their rightful place alongside men. You don't kick men off the table. You partner with men. I believe that it's that ancient adage, divide and conquer. If the enemy can come in and divide the genders, then he can more easily conquer the culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the scariest thing for the enemy is to imagine men and women working hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to accomplish what God has called us to accomplish in this world. So what I like to say to women is, I recognize that women have been victimized in our world over hundreds and hundreds of years. Women have been victimized, but we either choose to walk in victimization, or we choose to walk as leaders and powerful women and overcomers. And that's what I choose to do. I don't dismiss everything that's done wrong, and still maybe there's still wrong things even in the United States, with the pay for women and all that kind of thing. But I don't choose to participate in that. I will be a leader. I will be powerful. I will be an overcomer. One of the reasons I love doing real estate is there's no glass ceiling in real estate. There's no men's pay, women's pay in real estate. It is what it is. You produce, you sell, you make the same money as any other man would make. It has nothing to do with your gender. I love that about real estate. It's completely equal across the board. Sometimes I think when it comes to being a woman leader, Alex, we have to understand the definition of leadership. We have to understand, what does that mean? How do you lead, et cetera, et cetera. What I found in my life is, be a strong leader and people will follow you. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter what you do. Be a strong leader, be a good leader, be a servant leader. People will follow you, men and women, because they're looking for people of character. They're looking for people that are servant leaders. They're looking for people that will do what they say they're going to do and actually walk the walk, so to speak, not just talk the talk. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You just walk the walk. You be a strong leader. People will follow you. And I guess one of my number one messages to women is, be a powerful woman. God created you to be a powerful woman. Be a powerful woman. Don't let anyone steal that power from you. Not the world, not our culture, nothing. Go out and make your way, and don't take no for an answer, in a godly way, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So how do you want the world to be different because you lived in it?
Well, I would love, I would love to impact I'll tell you this. This is what I believe. Let me back up. I believe that our world, quality of life, our priorities are about people and about relationships. Everything is about relationships. All the rest is details. That's not my little adage. That's from Gary Smalley. I'm studying his book called DNA of Relationships right now. It's all about how to love one another well, basically, how to be in good relationships. And I believe that the number one thing we're called to do is to be in relationship with each other, one way or the other. And everything else kind of overflows from being in good relationship. So what I want to do is show people, by the way I am and by teaching and any way I can, influencing any way I can, how to have good relationships in their lives, how to be a good husband or wife, how to be a good mom or dad, how to be a good friend. What does it mean to walk with integrity and honesty and character? What does it mean to be a world changer? Because you're not going to be swayed by this opinion or that opinion. You're going to actually study, and you're going to walk in love. And I believe that I believe as Christians, we're called, again, to be Jesus to the world, and that the most important thing that we can do is love one another well. And I want to teach people how to love one another well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing that here, and you're also doing that through Saturday Night Supper Club. And I'm sure, because who you are in your business, it shines through in the way that you communicate with people and the way that you do business with those people who are in a vulnerable space of selling and buying their homes, and being a minister to so many people. And it's just, it's obvious of what you're going to do in the world. And I mean, it's something I like to ask people, which is kind of a brain bender, but at your funeral, what will it be like? Like, what will people say about you once you've reached end of life? What does that mean to you?
I hope it's a celebration. I hope that, it's going to be sacred. Funerals are always sacred. I hope people are like, man, she lived life well and she took risks. I mean, that's the one thing that when I started Saturday Night Supper Club, it was really scary for me because I had left a position where I was working for a church, and I decided I want to do this, and I wanted to be the leader of this thing. And that was really scary for me because It just was, so you're starting your own thing. And some people don't think women can be leaders of churches and all that kind of thing. I want people to be like, you know what? She was not stopped by fear of man or fear of risk. Risk is a big deal. Sometimes we take risk that God doesn't call us to, but sometimes God calls us to risk and we're afraid to do it, And I want people to be like, you know what? She loved well and she didn't let fear stop her. That's what I want people to say. She loved well. She had the heart of God, but she was bold. She was a bold person, and she didn't let risk stop her.
What is your definition of success and suggestion to those trying to master their own version of success?
I think there's a lot of different definitions. I don't think success is defined by how much money you have in the bank, how thin you are, anything like external like that. I think success has to do with your quality of life. What is your quality of life, and what are the quality of the relationships around you? What are you doing to add value to this world? It may be, there are some people out there, Alex, who are doing incredible things in just a very thankless way. There are people that will go to disaster areas and just start feeding the firemen, or start, feed the first responders. And I think people like that are the definition of success. They're not chasing after that brass ring. They're not like, how much money can I make? Or can I get up early at 5 and go out and exercise for 2 hours? That's great if you want to do that, if you feel called to do that. But if you're doing that to compete with what the world says success is, I think that's crazy. The Bible says you can't take anything with you. Tomorrow your life could be called. You could be called before God tomorrow. What are you going to have to show for it? Because you're not going to take any of your money with you, none of your possessions. The only thing we can take with us is people. And I think the definition of success has to do with how well do you love the people around you? Are you loving well? Are you adding value to culture or society in the way that you've been called to add value? Quality of life. How are you resting? Are you working your ass off? Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. Are you working your butt off? And not spending time with the people that are important in your life,
Absolutely.
I know people that make $300,000 a year and have no relationship with their kids. Is that success? I don't find that to be success. I'd rather go camping with my kids, or go on vacation, or go to the Rockies game, which bummer, they lost really bad last night. Go to a Rockies game with my kid all day long than chase after the brass ring of money. Seriously.
Yeah, me too. I've been there.
But we all know it takes a vocation. It takes money to add value to this world. So you have to find that job that's also your sweet spot,
Yeah. And it's such a narrow path to find that. And between you and I, sister, and other people that are out there, I really think we can help people before it's too late. Being in healthcare with seniors for the last 5 years, I've realized that life is so short, and I would hear them regret things. I met so many people whose children passed away between the age of 30 and 50. And they didn't get to spend that time with them because they were chasing something, or they were bitter, or they didn't live in forgiveness. And a lot of the time when you live your life based on other people's expectations, you then live with resentment, which is something I also saw a lot in senior care, which is where the children, they're resentful to their mom or dad because now their mom or dad is in Alzheimer's, memory care unit. And it didn't matter that they had that college degree and that 6-figure job, or they became a doctor like their mom or dad, because they didn't even care. And at the end of the day, end of life, their mom or dad barely even knew who they were. So was it worth it? I think not, and I think our parents eventually, if you're just honest with them, you stand up for yourself and be like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And I hope you can respect that. And if not, then, we'll have to just take some time apart until you can. And I think a lot of people would be surprised how much their parents would be proud of them. And, it's, as a parent, it's our job to mold our kids and to direct our children in a good manner. And we want to protect them from pains. And that's a big downfall of being a parent, is that you wish, I wish that I could just give my son all of my mistakes so he could learn fast and he didn't have to go through all of the trials and tribulations that come with growing up. but we have to let them do that. We have to let them fail. We have to let them walk their own path. And it sucks and it's scary, but God, it's so much more rewarding when you can stand behind what you're doing and say, I did it. You know, maybe I only make $30,000 a year, or maybe I only make $70,000 a year comparatively to someone who makes $1 million a year, whatever it is. But hey, I'm really happy. And that's worth it. Your life is so much better. You know,
I think it goes back to your definition of success. You know, unfortunately, our country is very driven by, you know, money or how much money you make or what vacation you go on or whatever. And or how old are you, Alec? Are you a millennial or not a millennial?
I'm a millennial. I'm 29.
Oh, you're a millennial. Okay. You know, there's millennials out there. Like I have a son, kind of like you, not entrepreneurial like you are, but he wants to be a doctor. Nothing I've ever put into his head. You know, I've never said, oh, you know, all my kids need to be doctors or lawyers or anything like that. I've always allowed my kids to just what's in their heart. Like I have one son who's going to be a doctor. I have another son who's in seminary. And then my daughter is in Bible college, you know, so it's kind of a variety of different, the Bible college she's in is not accredited. It's not like regular academics, you know, but my son Christian, who's in medical school, he does it because it's a dream in his heart. You know, he loves it. I feel like if you go to medical school, you have to love it because it's so hard, you know, and he's not doing it for the money and he's not doing it to please anybody. He's doing it because he loves it so much. And I want to support what people love, but at the same time, we have to teach our kids. I think it's hard, Alex, and you can maybe answer this as a millennial. You know, when I grew up, again, not telling you my age, but I was born in the 60s. When I grew up, man, you know, when you were 18 or 19, you moved out of your parents' house, you got a job, you made it work. You know what I mean? There wasn't this extended adolescence that we see with a lot of our kids. Do you know what I mean? Where they're still living with their parents or they don't seem motivated to find their way. Does that make sense? And I don't know if that's a product of being so successful that kids are not motivated. And maybe you can shed some light on this. What do you see with your age group of people? Because you're a millennial, you know, and I see people like you that are driven, that are wanting to do what you've been called to do and make your way in this world and kind of take responsibility for yourself. And then I see other kids who really struggle in that area. What's your thought on that?
Well, I'd love to tell you my thought on that. So there's two things. There's nurture versus nature, as you know. So how were you nurtured growing up? Do you use that as an excuse or do you use that as a thing to fuel you? And then there's nature, which is the environment you're in, the demographic you live in, the school you go to, the city you live in. So then you have outside influencers in your life. And it's ultimately whether you make it an excuse or a reason. So you can use your upbringing and you can use your age, you can use your family, you can use your friends, and all of that, your income, your, you know, family situation as an excuse to not chase your dreams, or you can use it as a reason. So you have kids that come from families who are millionaires or at least very well off, and they use that as an excuse, like, well, I'm not that hungry to go after my dreams. I don't really need to, you know, my parents are going to give me an inheritance when they die anyways. And I feel really sorry for those people. And then you have the other people who come from a family of wealth and who are going to get an inheritance or whatnot. And they use that as a reason to succeed because they're like, hey, nothing's stopping me. Like, I have resources behind me. So why not go after my dreams and just take the leap? And sure, I might, you know, get judged by people, but everyone gets judged by people, where nobody's exempt from other people's opinions on you. So you can either say, screw it and go after it, or you can let other people debilitate you. And that includes your family and upbringing. On the other end, someone will have a family or upbringing very poor on welfare, or, you know, parents. I have a friend, his parents are on his Netflix account. Usually it's the other way around, but he didn't use that as an excuse to stop him. He went after and chased after his dreams, even knowing he doesn't have a safety net. And then there's people who use it as an excuse. I have another friend from high school, and she's on welfare, still doing drugs, like never really grew up, and her parents were not very, you know, rich or anything. And she used that as a reason or an excuse not to succeed. So it comes down, as millennials, we are either extremely spoiled or very entitled, and we want everything now because of the technology giving us immediate gratification, immediate access to any information that we want. We think that life is going to be a microwave product where you just pop it in for 3 minutes and bloop, there goes your dreams, it's ready. It's not like that. You have to work for it. And the difference between the millennials and the Gen Xers and the baby boomers is that Gen Xers and baby boomers, and then even the Great Depression generation, they were taught differently. You got to get up, you got to go to work, you get out when you're 18. There were a lot of people that were drafted into the military, a lot of people that, you know, were army brats, were traveling around the world, and they saw what it was like to have to work really hard for what you want. And now in America, life is very different, and it's a land of opportunity, and you're either gonna take it and run with it, or you're not. And so being a millennial is a blessing, or it can be a curse. It depends on how you want to look at it.
That's good. That's well said, Alex. I do see a lot of millennials out there that are killing it. They're totally they're going for it, you know. And then you see some people that are just drifting around, and you don't know how to help them. You know what I mean? You wish you could give them an infusion of motivation, and you don't know how to help the people that are just drifting around. So it's hard sometimes, you know.
Yeah, well, and this podcast will help. Sharing things on social media is a big way to reach those millennials that are out there, because some millennials are using social media to boost who they are and boost their business, like I am. Some millennials are using social media to escape their pains in the world. So hopefully this will pop up in their news feed and into their ears, that you don't have to, you know, use social media as a way to escape your problems. You just need to talk to somebody and reach out and ask for help. And there are more than enough people out there that will reach a hand out and pull you out of your depression or out of your excuses. But you really have to want it. There's not a lot of ways we can help them other than by living authentically and being who we were called to be. And hopefully that will inspire others to do the same.
That is good. Yeah, I think that's good. And I think in sharing our own stories, I think the other thing that, you know, getting back to the definition of success, you know, I think one thing that we don't often talk about in success, a lot of times being successful is just a lot of hard work. It's not sexy. It's not glamorous. It's not, you know, rainbows and unicorns. It's just one thing that I heard, and I'm like, man, this is good. It's doing the next hard thing. You know, sometimes I look at the different characteristics of successful people. One of them was they make their bed every day. Isn't that funny? And so I make my bed every day, because there's something about being intentional and having your environment be not chaotic that lends itself towards success. I tend to be like, I'm in my study right now. I'm like, so glad you can't see my study because it's so cluttered and full of stuff. But I know that when I am organized and I have things in their proper places, I feel so much more free to do. I'm not bound down with stuff, you know? And then the other thing is, sometimes being successful is just doing the next hard thing, whatever that might be. Unloading your dishwasher, doing your laundry, spending time with your kids, going for a run, whatever you've called to do. Sometimes you just have to do the next hard thing, and that gets you to the next point. You know, when I was 39, I ran a marathon, and a marathon is like, what, 26 miles or something. The hardest thing I tell people, the hardest thing about a marathon is not the running, it's getting out the door, like putting your shoes on, saying, I'm going to go run, I'm going to go train. Once you start the training, once you start the running, the momentum keeps you going usually, you know. Now you will hit, in the middle of a marathon, almost always you'll hit what's called a brick wall, where you're like, oh, I just want to quit. I just want to quit. I don't want to go anymore. And you have to mentally punch through that wall. It's not even a physical thing. It's a mental thing. And I think with success, a lot of times we'll hit brick walls in what we're doing. We feel called to what we're doing. We love what we're doing, but there's aspects where we hit brick walls that we have to mentally just punch through that wall to get to the other side. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And that's just doing the next hard thing. That's just doing the next hard thing, you know?
Yeah. And in addition to that, it's doing the next hard thing, doing the next right thing, and doing the next thing right. and just keep doing it. Just keep going, because you don't know what God's got in store from you for the next phone call you're going to make to somebody. Like, people listening to this podcast, they have an opportunity to join your real estate team. They have an opportunity to join my Arbonne team. That right there is an opportunity for them to change their lives, and it's their choice. There's so many options out there, and it's up to the individual to take it and run with it. Well, I have a couple of more questions before we wrap up here. What are the top 3 books that have impacted your life?
Gosh, I read tons and tons of books. I love reading books on relationships. When I was younger, I read all fiction books because I was a little girl and I loved, just fiction. And now when I'm an adult, I have no time for fiction. So I read all nonfiction stuff. Outside of the Bible, which of course I have to say that's been a top influencer, but like in terms of other books, there are going to be books on relationships, like The DNA of Relationships. That's an awesome book. I've loved it so much. There's just tons I could recommend. I could recommend Strengths Finder. Did you ever do Strengths Finder, Alex? That's a really good one. Strengths Finder. Boundaries is a fantastic book. I love reading books on how do people relate well to each other. Bill Johnson just wrote a book called God is Good. I love that so much. There's one by Chris Valentin called Kingdom Wealth, which you would love this, Alex, because it really defines what is wealth from a kingdom perspective. And it doesn't disclude finances, but it also talks about being prosperous in your mind, your soul, your body, your relationships. What is the definition of true prosperity from a God perspective, and how do we achieve that kind of wealth, and how do we create wealth around us in that kind of a perspective? That's been a really big influence in my life.
Cool. And then who are your top 3 influencers?
I have a really good friend, Bob Holloway. He's been like a spiritual father to me, and he's definitely a top influencer in terms of personal, and I can bounce all kinds of things off of him. We have a similar heart in terms of how we like to love people and be there for people. My husband's an influencer. He is such an encourager to me. He really draws out the entrepreneurial type of spirit that God has given me, which, that was never fostered in me as a child, because my parents were academic people. They were teachers. My dad was a pastor. They are all about the intellect, but not much in terms of ambition, business-wise or anything like that, because that just wasn't part of their world. And so I was never raised that way. I was never raised with an entrepreneurial mindset. It's just something that God put inside of me. But my husband's very entrepreneurial, so he draws that out of me. And we like to talk and dream about different kinds of entrepreneurial ideas and things that we could do. I mean, it's kind of like instead of brainstorming, I call that dream storming, where we dream together about things that maybe God has called us to do, So he's a big influencer. And then I have a really good girlfriend. Her name is Carla, and she's been a really top influencer with me in terms of drawing me closer to the Lord. She's been a good spiritual teacher and mentor.
Wow. Awesome. Was there anything else that you want to share that's on your heart for this episode? Anything at all?
Going back to victimization and women and all that kind of thing, I felt so held down for most of my life because I believed a lot of what people told me about who I was or what my gender could do and what it couldn't do and stuff like that. And I want to say to women, throw all that off. Don't let other people define what you're called to do. You're not here to please other people in this world. You're here to be in relationship with God and to be a world changer. And sometimes being a world changer means we need to be strong. We need to be powerful. We need to lead where we're called to lead. But never are we called to lead by diminishing or demeaning other people, and including men. And I think there's been such a gender battle and a war. And I'm not saying that we haven't been done wrong. I believe women have been done wrong. I think women don't make as much money as men in the same position. That's not right. I believe there's still chauvinism out there. But I believe the only way to get around that is to lead well and not let that stop us. There's this saying, I don't know if I've ever told this to you, Alex. A man was plowing a field and he came to a stump in the field, and he had a decision to make. He could take 3 days and pull that stump out of the field, dig it up and put a chain around it and drag it out, or he could plow around it and keep on going. And what I want to say to women is plow around it and keep on going. Don't let the stumps in your life stop you from your forward momentum. You don't have to stand there and burn it down and burn your bras and walk around, naked and all that to make your point. You don't have to do that. If you really want to advance women, don't be derailed by stuff that's not productive in your life and doesn't move your agenda forward. Plow around that stump and keep on going. Does that make sense?
Amen.
That's my number one. Women, I know that I'm not saying there's not a place for, rallies and parades and everything like that, but does it advance your cause, or are you just being divisive? Division doesn't usually produce any kind of fruit. Yeah. Be leaders in unity, be leaders in maturity and character, and you'll watch the doors that God will open for women.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say.
Wonderful. I'm so appreciative for you hopping on the show, hopping on this podcast. And how can people contact you? How can people learn about Saturday Night Supper Club, about your real estate business? How can they do that?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook. I'm Paula Waterman on Facebook. I've got Saturday Night Supper Club on Facebook. And SaturdayNightSupperClub.org is our website. WatermanTeamRealty.com is my website. You can find me there on the internet. I do a little bit of Instagram and Twitter and Google+, but not a lot because I'm not a millennial, just so you know. But I do try to do my best when it comes to that. But yeah, you can find me on the web.
Great. Well, thanks, Paula, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.